Hello. My name's Esther, and I am now a yoga teacher, yoga teacher. In March last year, I started a yoga teacher training course, and at the time I was one of these ridiculous people who calls himself a vegetarian, but actually occasionally eat some fish. And also, if I fancied a packet of fruit pastels, I would pretend I didn't know what was in them. I wasn't that committed to it. I had been in the past, but I wasn't always as committed as I felt I should have been to my vegetarian leanings. So I started my teacher training, and about half an hour into the first day of the course, I realised that the teacher training was going to do more than teach people how to get into yoga postures, that it was going to actually teach me an awful lot about myself and how I wanted to live, how I could live a better life and a happier life. At the time, I wasn't really in a very good place in a lot of ways. I was probably recovering from a nervous breakdown. I drank too much, I smoked too much, I was very stressed out and angry with the world. So I saw this teacher training as a real opportunity to improve my life, my health, and my general well-being. Within 2 weeks, I think it was about the second week of the course. Sorry, I meant to have all my notes here. I read something in the coursework that made me start to think that the teacher training was actually going to have a significant impact on every aspect of my life. When the note started to talk about the yoga diet, and it was talking about how the quote is, many people of the world have been deluded into thinking that they cannot survive except on a diet high in animal protein. Now, my mother was constantly telling me that I was unhealthy, I was too thin because I didn't eat fish. And so that's why I ate fish. Normally it was because of my mother telling me I needed to eat fish. And so many people do think that we need animal protein, so we need cheese. If you don't eat meat, you need cheese, you need eggs. Where else can you get your protein from? And I started to wonder about this, whether that was actually true or not. A few weeks later in the course, we had an article which is called Nutritious Substitutes for Milk and Milk Products, which was really interesting to read. And that again was talking about how animal milk was not the ideal food source that we've been led to believe it is. A sentence that really stood out in this was when it talked about the fact that cow's milk has hormones that are specifically designed for baby cows. Baby cows grow much faster than human children. Milk is designed to suit that rate of growth, not the rate of growth of humans. So again, these little bits of information were trickling into my mind and making me really question the way that I've always eaten. And then a big change in my approach came when, I think it was about week 10, I heard again about the link between milk, dairy products, and asthma and mucus-based disorders. And I have asthma, I have a dust allergy, so I'm constantly suffering with my chest or blocked up nose. So I decided then, having had all this information trickling into my mind, that I was going to give up dairy. And I stopped eating cheese and found it surprisingly easy to give up cheese. I thought I would really miss it. I miss cheese on toast occasionally, but I found that really easy. What I struggled with was chocolate. And occasionally my willpower wasn't quite what it should have been, and I did occasionally eat the odd bit of chocolate. I had sometimes coffee with milk in. I didn't have the commitment to it. But at the same time, I also, at some point after making the decision to stop eating dairy products, I watched VegFest, which was kind of watching it like this. Oh my god. And gradually these voices in my head that were telling me that I really needed to change a lot more about my diet than just giving up cheese and milk were getting louder and louder. While all this was going on, I was learning about some key concepts in yoga that really shape what yoga is. So while there was this inner dialogue going on about my food, I was really thinking on a very deep level about how I live my life. Most people think of yoga as just being postures or just being sitting cross-legged in this position, chanting Om. That's the Western view of yoga generally. You're either tying yourself in knots or you're not doing anything very much. But yoga is an entire system that comprises of how you live, how you think, how you view the world, how you eat. It's everything. It is a guide. It's a route map for how to live a good, happy, healthy life with a obviously very spiritual aspect to it. The system of yoga that I was learning was followed the 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga. So the 8 limbs of yoga are like a roadmap to spiritual enlightenment and evolution. And at the base of the 8 limbs of yoga, there are the yamas and the niyamas. And the yamas and the niyamas are kind of the do's and don'ts of yoga. And they guide your ethical and moral choices in life. And all of these, as I started to think about them more and more, and think about them in lots of different ways and how they can be applied to my life in lots of different ways, I started to see how they all influence my decisions about what I eat. The first one is ahimsa, and ahimsa is normally translated as non-violence. It's also, I've seen it translated as compassion for all living things, and I think that's a beautiful translation of it. That basically says that if you want to live a yogic life, you can't eat anything that has had violence put upon it in order for you to eat it. So that in the Hindu tradition, Hindus are generally vegetarian for this reason, that they don't eat anything that has been subjected to violence. So ahimsa was a very big reason why I started to realise that I couldn't carry on deluding myself that I was eating a violence-free diet, which is what I'd always thought I'd been doing, apart from when I was eating the fish. The next one of the yamas is satya, which is commitment to truth. Now that's not just not telling other people lies, but it's also about being true to yourself. And I started to realise more and more that if I was to be true to myself, I had to listen to those voices in my head that were telling me you shouldn't be eating those eggs, and it was spoiling my enjoyment of what I was eating because I was.
Is this your conscience or some other worldly voice?
Well, what's your conscience? Where does that come from? Is it coming from a higher power, or is it coming from, I was learning all this spiritual stuff, so it could have been a higher power talking to me, or it could have just been my internal conscience developing. I'm not sure. I haven't decided on that yet. So to stick to live according to my truth, it was becoming glaringly obvious that I had to really change the way that I ate. The next one is asteya. Asteya is not stealing, and it also is translated as not taking what belongs to somebody or something else. And I think that particularly you can really think of that quite in the case of eggs, for example. You're taking something from an animal that doesn't have the ability to say that's mine. Please leave it alone. So in taking from, and particularly once you start to learn about what goes on in the dairy industry and the egg industry, we're really taking from these animals something which we're violating these animals so that we can take something that doesn't belong to us. That milk is meant for baby cows. It's not meant for us. Those eggs are not meant for us.
Nothing worse than when they're taking the calf away from the mother and hearing the mother cry.
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, in order to produce milk, it's barbaric what goes on, and we take things all the time that don't belong to us, in thinking that we are entitled, and we're not entitled to any of it. The next yama is called brahmacharya, and that is to do with control of the senses and control of the desires. So, for example, when I was thinking, I want a packet of fruit pastels, and I was just eating them, regardless of the fact that I knew they had gelatin in, and I knew that the young vegetarian me would have been horrified that I was doing it, I did it anyway because I wanted to. But we have to move beyond what we desire and do what we know is right. It all ties in with the truth as well, that, to live your truth. Now I don't get the urges so much, but if I really fancy a fries Turkish delight, which occasionally I do, I can control that now because I know that I don't want to do that anymore because I've made a conscious decision about what I eat. Aparigraha, which is the last of the yamas, is about only taking what we need. So you were talking an awful lot about the environmental cost of animal-based food production. as a species, we are absolutely appalling in what we take from the environment in order to sustain our alleged need for meat and animal-based food. So through applying this to the diet, again, this is we only take what we need. We don't need to eat food that comes from animals and that we need to make animals suffer for. We don't need to do it, so therefore we shouldn't do it. So they're the yamas, and they're kind of like the don'ts. It's all kind of about what you shouldn't do, but you can turn it around and say how you look at it as how you should live. The niyamas are the how we would be to evolve, the steps that we take to evolve as humans. So the yamas are about controlling the animal instincts in us, and the niyamas are about evolving as humans. And again, well, 4 of these I can see easily applying to the choice to become vegan. The first one is called socha, and that's to do with cleanliness, and that's to do with not only keeping the body clean, keeping the external environment clean, but also again to do with the environment, the damage that gets caused to the environment, and the food that we eat, what we put into our bodies has such a huge impact on us that we've got to eat clean foods, and clean food. Food that comes with suffering attached to it doesn't feel like it's very clean to me. Santosha is contentment, and one of the reasons why I resisted becoming a vegan for so long was because I just kept thinking about all the things I miss. I only focused on what I'd be giving up. I didn't think about what I would gain and that I could be happy with what I would gain. And actually, since I've become vegan, I've discovered a whole world of actual cooking, because I now don't go and just buy stuff out of the freezer section in Asda. I go to a recipe book, and I'm more inclined to cook now, because my eyesight's getting a little bit that I have to do that, and I really can't face reading instructions on ingredients on boxes. And plus, it's so much more interesting. It's opened my eyes up to cooking again and reminded me that I enjoy cooking. So I've developed this contentment with something that I always thought of was quite a chore in the past. Tapas is discipline. And discipline, my friend over here will tell you I am quite bad at disciplining myself about things. But again, the discipline of resisting the things that I might occasionally have a craving for has actually become really easy now that I can see my dietary choices in the context of these yamas and niyamas, because again, keeping my discipline relates to living my truth. I'm not forcing myself to not do something that I want to do or do something that I don't want to do. I am actually living my truth and what I believe is right for me, and that feels good. So when I resist the Fry's Turkish Delight, it actually feels okay. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about, now there is another one, but the last one that I'm going to talk about is self-study. And the self-study element of the niyamas was actually part of, it gave way to some enormous, massive transformations in my life, which I'm not necessarily going to talk about now, but looking at myself and looking at what I was, what I thought I was, what I wanted to be, the kind of life I wanted to live, the kind of person I wanted to be, and looking at how I was and, comparing the two things. I could see the disconnect between who I was and who I wanted to be. And so that self-study really helped me to elevate myself and to live my truth and according to what I believed. So these yamas and niyamas they've helped me make an awful lot of changes to my life besides my diet, but they very much pointed me in the direction of veganism is actually the only way that I can now eat. And I can't think of any, I've seen people talking about, I tried veganism but it didn't work for me, and I can't think of any way that I would actually be able to go back to eating animal-based products now, because I haven't given stuff up just because I wanted to give up. I've given stuff up because my thinking around everything has changed so much. An example of how truth and living my truth has fitted well with this is the other day I went for lunch with somebody that I only recently met, and in the cafe that we went to there wasn't really any options that didn't didn't have cheese in them. The vegetarian options, they all had cheese. And one was halloumi. And I love halloumi. I do miss halloumi. And I had a brief thought of, and it's okay, I could just have halloumi this once. Nobody would know. And as soon as I had that thought, I thought, yeah, but I would. And I wouldn't have been able, I think if I'd had that halloumi, I don't think I'd be able to be sitting here now talking about this, because I feel like I was lying to you, even if I didn't actually say the words about that. But it really helps me to guide my decisions when I am tempted. I remember that, I want to be truthful to myself. You talked briefly about the spiritual evolution of animals, and that is also another aspect of yoga philosophy that has really helped me to think about why it is that I want to be vegan, or why I need to be vegan. Because according to Hindu beliefs about the evolution of the soul, we are one soul that travels through thousands and thousands and thousands of lifetimes. And at one point, we were all an animal. At several points, we've all been many, many animals in the past. So when you think that, if you eat meat or if you eat dairy products, the cow that is in such terror and such pain and under such stress in the slaughterhouse or in the dairy farm now could one day be one of your descendants. That kind of puts it into a different sort of perspective as well. They could be my grandchildren, and that really helped me to sort of internalize this idea that, well, we're all living creatures on this planet. We are a species of animal, just like all these others. Sorry?
I thought you had a question.
Oh, all right, okay. So that brings me to another concept in yoga, which is called Vasudeva. I can't even read my writing now. Kudambaka. I think that might be wrong. I wrote it out very quickly and I can never remember it. But it's the concept that the whole world is one family, that there isn't division between humanity in gender, race, ethnic divisions. They're all man-made. Every division that we put up is man-made. And between species, we are all part of the same organism on this planet. We are all part of the same thing. We all have to live in harmony together on this planet, whether we're humans or animals. And that we should all, as we care for each other, we should also care for all the other creatures that live on this planet. And we should try and do as little harm to other people, other creatures, because everything else is just a reflection of ourselves, that we are all the same. We're all connected so closely. And in particularly when you look at the food system, you're not more, you're very connected when you're eating something that comes from an animal, and that energy and the emotions that animal was feeling at the time of its death or when it gave you that milk, it carries through, so you're really connected to that pain as well. And so I learned an awful lot from yoga. Yoga also talks very much about the fact that food is an essential fuel for us. As we need food to survive. So we should eat food that serves our bodies well, and that serves our minds well, and that serves our souls well. And I just really came to the conclusion that the only way to ensure that my food was actually meeting all of those aspects of me, and serving my soul as well as my body, was to ensure that there was as little suffering and violence in what I ate as possible.